Welcome to Breaking Solo, how solopreneurs break barriers, build brands, and embrace the future of business.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Breaking Solo. We appreciate you being here today, and I'm very excited to have Daniela Wolfe on the podcast today. Daniela, will you tell the audience about yourself and your business?
Sure. Thank you so much, Donna, for having me. Like you said, my name is Daniela Wolfe. My business is Best D Life, helping you find the bliss in your busy. I've actually been a full-time social worker for almost 30 years now. So I'm clinically trained in all things mindfulness, stress management, coping skills, all of that kind of stuff, as well as a mom of two. And even though I help people with burnout now, a lot of this came from my own burnout almost 20 years ago. I went through a divorce. My kids were young, like 4 and 6 months old, and I'm a people pleaser. I'm very driven. I wanted to prove that I was capable of doing it all, being it all. And in the process of all of that, drove myself straight into my own burnout. It showed up as being irritable. I was always rushing, always snapping, things like that. And I had kind of a rock bottom moment when I realized that wasn't who I knew I could be. That wasn't who I wanted my kids to grow up remembering. And so I started to finally practice what I help other people with, because so many times as helpers, we're great with everybody else and forget to take that time to turn that lens on ourselves. And so it started with a super small gratitude practice, listing 3 to 5 things every day I was grateful for. At the time, our grocery store had free childcare. So, it was actually a lot of mindset work for me to be able to put my kids in there and feel comfortable, especially when I ran into people and they'd be like, oh, where are the kids? That mindset can be almost like those mean girls in our head that say those negative things that nobody else is thinking but you, as well as just taking more time for myself. I joined a gym that had free childcare and realized these small little micro shifts, and there were a lot of other ones that I'll talk about as we go along. Not only did I start to show up better, but my kids did too, and I realized I showed up better at work. I was doing better in my relationships. It really benefited everybody else around me the more that I was able to take this time and do things for myself. And I realized, people were asking what I was doing or sharing moments that they took time for themselves because of something I said or did. And I realized I think we're all looking for that validation and permission to take that time for ourselves, to put ourselves back on our to-do list. And that's kind of where some of that spark was born.
That's awesome. So was that the turning point that made you commit to being a solopreneur?
It actually came a little bit longer after that. Like I said, I've been on my own personal journey for almost 20 years now. I then went to an event, I think it was back in like 2017, 2018. And it was this like all day yoga, kind of high vibe event with connection, a lot of community. It was like a packed room. And the energy that I left that place with, that's part of them where I was like, I want to feel like this all the time. And I want to incorporate the things that I've been doing for myself and that I realize are helping other people. And so I started, to kind of look into it. Actually, me and another coworker initially started looking into doing something together, but then she had a young son still and the timing just didn't work for her. But, we chatted and I was like, I think I'm still going to go forward with this. And so in 2020, pre-COVID, I filed my LLC and started my journey. I did take a little time off during COVID, about 6 months, because I was still a full-time counselor and doing virtual counseling, and starting a business were just way too much to handle. But yeah, I've been pretty much consistent since then.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for you. So, what's been your biggest challenge in your journey? And did you overcome it? Or if you did, how?
Yeah. So initially, the biggest journey for me was learning some of the technology. I wasn't on social media. I didn't know how to use a lot of the technology. Like, I'm great at what I do as far as my skill set as a counselor, as a practitioner, as a coach. I'm now a speaker, author, those kind of things. When it comes to my zone of genius, I'm really good at that. But technology was the learning curve. Learning business, learning marketing, learning sales was a big learning curve for me. And definitely, finding people to help me. I found locally, there was a small business development center in our local college that helped answer so many questions. It connected me with so many great resources. There were actually a couple kind of small business centers that I was able to tap into to get some support and some help, and learned a lot about the areas that I am actually now feeling like I'm actually really good at. And so just being open to learning and being open to not knowing everything, and putting that out there, is like messy and vulnerable as it is, that these are things I'm not good at. They're not my zone of genius and I don't know them. And I just am looking to get help, and work through that process.
That's awesome. And audience, almost every community has those kind of resources that you can tap into. I mean, SCORE is a huge resource and they
Mm-hmm.
charge you nothing. So
Yep.
look in your community and take advantage of that.
Yeah, they have some
So,
amazing connections.
yeah, exactly. So, how do you handle self-doubt or imposter syndrome?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I mentioned, what I called the mean girls in my head, it's part of that mindset work, because I think we all have imposter syndrome. I've heard even interviews with like famous celebrities, famous performers, and things like that. Everybody gets those doubts. And physiologically, even our body doesn't know the difference between anxiety and excitement. Physiologically, it shows up exactly the same. And so part of it is the story that you tell yourself. And recognizing that story, stopping and pausing that story, and creating a new narrative is really key when it comes to getting over that imposter syndrome, getting over those limiting beliefs. And I have a couple different practices to help with mindset, not only for myself personally, but just even with my clients when I work with them, to help reframe that narrative of what you're telling yourself. Because most of the time, I would say it's not true. And we would never talk like that to somebody else the way we talk to ourselves, And so
Isn't that
really
true?
learning that self-compassion to be able to say those things the way we would to somebody else. And that can come through practicing, positive affirmations. It can come from journaling. It can come from, again, just the story you tell yourself. Even sometimes it's so simple as the word of the use yet. I can't do this yet. I'm not great at this yet. It allows for that possibility of course, you're not good at it yet. It's brand new. You're not expected to be perfect right away, but that doesn't mean you can't get there. And so just allowing yourself that potential for that growth and using those growth mindset strategies is huge.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Um, do you have a unique niche?
Um, it's mostly busy professionals. It's taken me kind of some trial and error in some different areas to narrow in on that one. It, obviously encompasses some other areas. Some people might be moms, some people might be men, some people might be professionals in a non-traditional way. You can still be a stay-at-home mom and be a professional. Managing a household is like being the CEO of your own mini kind of corporation. You got some employees that, run to a different beat than you and things like that. But, you're all managing different things in your life, and trying to find that work-life balance and prevent burnout in whatever area you're in is my specialty.
Awesome. So, how do you differentiate yourself from the competition?
Some of it is just based on my background, having that professional counseling background. So as a coach, even though I'm not using that license, it's definitely entwined in what I do. My signature formula is the Exhausted to Empowered formula. And so it is specifically tailored to that mindset, your time planning, and your self-care. And I approach self-care in a very different way than I think a lot of people do. Sometimes self-care, I think, gets a bad rap as being seen as something fluffy or nice to have. I look at it from a very practical standpoint. It's a daily necessity, like eating, sleeping, and brushing your teeth. And I teach micro moments that you insert throughout your day in these 8 different areas, everything from how you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how you dress, how you decorate and organize your home, how you think about money, how you connect with others, as well as that traditional personal development like meditation, mindfulness, journaling. And to start to see, it's more of a lifestyle. It's a way of living that really helps then to create a very kind of personalized for depending on whatever season of life you're in, a way of integrating these different areas.
That's so important that, it's like putting the mask on you in the airplane before you help somebody else. You have to take care of yourself so you can take care of those around you that you love.
Absolutely. As well as, our self-care, it's not just about being relaxed and calm and zen. Your self-care brings you your confidence, and it brings that energy that you show up with. And when you feel confident and you're in a good place, that gets translated to everybody else. I heard somebody say once, like you set the temperature for the room. You set the weather. It's either going to be stormy or it's going to be a sunshiny day, depending on how you show up.
Absolutely. So
Mm-hmm.
true. Okay. So have you seen any trends that you think solopreneurs should be paying attention to right now?
Yeah, I think community is the big trend, is what I'm seeing. A lot of people are backing away from kind of some of the broader speaking at people type of marketing and looking at conversations, looking at building relationships, creating those containers for those relationships to happen and focusing, obviously sales, you still want them to happen, but focusing less on the sales and building more of the community and relationships is how you then can grow and build those referrals, build that know, like, and trust in that way.
Absolutely. And then the sales follow because you've done the work.
Absolutely.
So, do you have a tool, an app, a resource that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
It might sound like a silly one, but I love Calendly. That is one of my favorite tools because it does a great job of not only helping me with the time planning part of my day, it, kind of automates a lot of it for me, but it also creates a lot of great reminders because I need those reminders personally, as well as it shares them with other people. And, it just creates some organization to my day and my life that kind of helps a lot. So I love using Calendly. I love using my auto scheduler for my social media as well because my whole thing is talking about work-life balance. And so even though I might post every single day, I'm not necessarily on social media every single day, but I can block out, weeks in advance, both actually not only my social media, but with my emails, so that I'm still showing up, I'm still present, but don't always have to be, in my business 24/7.
Smart lady. So, are there any books or courses or mentors that have made a really big impact on your success?
I mean, there's so many in so many different ways, honestly. I've had some different coaches, like I said, locally with my small business development center. This one woman, Marilyn, has been literally with me since the beginning 5 years ago. And just sometimes having that mirror of when I don't feel like I'm making progress, to have that person who's seen you the whole way through to be able to reflect that back to me and help me to see kind of the things I've done is more important than helping to tell me where to go. I need to see the fact that the work was productive, even if it doesn't have those outward tangible metrics, because I think sometimes we put so much stock into, how many likes did it get, how many people did we meet, or how much did it make, versus the growth that isn't always as tangible.
Yeah. The growth that's also often more personal.
Yeah. And the one that has the bigger impact on your resilience and longevity, because, being a solopreneur and being an entrepreneur in general, it's a long game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so you don't always have, those big, you see online, people are like, oh, I had a 20K month. I had, all these big things. And it doesn't always look like that. Sometimes it's the slow and steady and quiet that can have that biggest impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you a question about mindset and productivity. And you've probably already answered most of this, but do you have a daily habit or routines that help you to stay focused and productive?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it is some of just those daily habits of my own self-care. They help me stay grounded, so I start and end my day with me. They have the flexibility of, some days I might only have 10, 15 minutes. Some days I might have more, 40, 50 minutes, but they're always grounded in movement and mindfulness. And so I always start my day with that. So there's 5-minute yoga workouts if I'm running short on time. I have longer ones if need be, as well as I always end my day with an actual hard copy book. And so some days it's 3 sentences, some days it's 3 paragraphs. But having the consistency of those things helps me start and end my day and feeling grounded in myself so I don't feel lost in the clutter. I definitely use my own strategies as far as, in addition to the way I kind of focus on those moments, is I plan my time very intentionally throughout my day to have a couple set priorities, because when you make everything just a long to-do list of everything important, nothing's really important. So I focus on a couple key things each day, as well as integrating that time throughout. I use some time management tools like the Pomodoro method, to kind of help me get through moments of time and completing tasks. And so, there's a different layers of a lot of these habits, but the consistency of them is what makes them most effective.
Absolutely. So I use the full focus planner and identify my 3 goals for each day.
Mm-hmm.
And it also backs up to the 3 for the month, the 3 for the quarter, for the year. So it helps to have that kind of focus.
Absolutely.
So what's one piece of advice that you'd give someone that's just starting out on their solopreneur journey?
Give yourself grace. None of us have this all figured out from the get-go. Even the people that look like they do. So many times I've had people say to me, "Oh my gosh, you look like you're crushing it, you're killing it, you're doing great." But, what appears on the outside doesn't always line up with how you're feeling on the inside, and that's okay. Give yourself grace to just not have it all figured out, to be human, to be learning and fumbling along the way. When we're kids, we're okay with, falling down when we're learning how to ride a bike or learning how to rollerblade, and not being perfect that first time. And I think as adults, we don't always give us that same kind of learning curve to figure stuff out and get it wrong while we're figuring it out. And to just have, not, I don't know if confidence is the right word, but to allow yourself to do it messy. People say sometimes I'm not ready yet to show up online because I don't have it all figured out. That's okay. I think the more you practice and get used to it is how you figure out what you want it to look like and get it right. So just stick with it. Allow yourself to mess up and be human, but keep sticking with it. And that consistency is what's really going to help you thrive.
Absolutely. Good for you. Okay. Where do you have any exciting projects or launches coming up that you'd like to share?
Well, hopefully this fall, knock on wood, the audio version of my book should be coming out this fall. So the book came out a year ago. That's available on Amazon. It's called Balance Breakthrough, a practical guide for busy professionals to take charge of their work life and well-being. And it's basically everything I teach one-on-one. It's in this guided playbook for you to work through the process on your own. But the audio book has been taking some time, so I'm excited for that to come out this fall.
Great. Okay. We'll have all of that in the show notes, folks. So look out for that. And where can people connect with you?
My website is bestdlife.com, and I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as bestdlife. And feel free to reach out, email me, send me a DM with any questions or any way I can help support you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Daniela, for being a guest today. I certainly appreciate it. And if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't subscribed or given us a review, please do so. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Donna.